What's up, guys? My name's Sean and I'm the host of the NFT Talks podcast. And today we have a representative from Async.Art. His name is Achilleas, and he's going to talk about everything to do with dynamic NFTs and what Async.Art are doing. So these NFTs are forever changing. They have a master NFT and they have layers, and you change the layers and it changes the master NFT. It's really interesting, it's really exciting, and it's going to open a lot more doors to what artists or creators can do with NFTs and what kind of things you can collect. So if this is something that sounds interesting to yourself, make sure you stay tuned and let's help build this community. Another great guest, as usual, bringing on a great guest to talk about great projects. And this guy is called Achilleas, and he's from Async.Art, which we're going to get into the real in-depth of how this actually works. But how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
I'm not too bad, man. I mean, happy to have you on. I know we connected. Not many people I connect to face-to-face, so it was nice to actually meet somebody first and then actually do something on Zoom. So we connected at the event at Digital Natives in Manchester.
That's a great event. It was really fun.
Yeah, how did you find that?
I thought it was amazing. I mean, it was my first sort of in-person event for a long time, and it was my first in-person NFT event ever. So it was very odd to see and talk about all these things that we usually do online in the real world. Very interesting and great fun.
Yeah, I know it's exciting times, man. Like obviously with NFTs, but like you say, it's always good to connect to people and actually meet people and have conversations. And in the UK, especially, we can see that it's starting to grow and people starting to get that interest. And I can feel there's a real buzz around the NFT space.
For sure. I mean, it seems like the UK is one of the, most well, not, I wouldn't say popular, but it seems like it's really taking off. And a lot of great artists are from the UK. A lot of great crypto artists are from here as well, which is really nice. Yeah.
So before we get into Async.Art, let's talk a bit about yourself, background-wise. So, I mean, when did you actually first? I would like to ask people, and I think it's so important to ask about when did you actually first hear about NFTs, or when did the penny drop? I like to call it. Is like, oh, I understand what's going on here.
So I think the first time I heard the term non-fungible token was back in July 2020.
Okay,
probably a bit late. I had come across CryptoKitties before, and I had also come across CryptoPunks, but I didn't entirely understand what was going on there. So I went in from the DeFi, like that's how I started getting to crypto, DeFi and Ethereum, and then understanding what tokens are and how they work. And I was like, okay, these ones are unique. Okay, what's the point in that? Well, I guess you can attach images to it. So I'd say, yeah, it was around there. And my first experience, I think, was probably Meme.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a fun one, where you could mint, like you stake it and you mint memes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. I mean, I think a lot. You say like it's pretty late, but I think for a lot of people in the space now, that's when they actually took notice. That's why I would say when the penny dropped, because you may have heard about CryptoPunks, you may have heard about CryptoKitties, but nobody was paying attention. Like, so I think that's where we really picked up the buzz and everyone got involved. But I'm really interested to speak about obviously you guys, Async.Art, what you're doing, because it's dynamic NFTs, which I think is, and you're primarily focused on that, which I don't think that I haven't seen any organization or company actually just primarily focus on that. So I'd love to hear about how that works and educate obviously the audience about that. So if you can give us a bit of introduction to what you guys do, and then we can go into obviously the masters and the layers and how that works.
Sure. So Async.Art was founded in February 2020, which is not that long ago, but feels like ages ago in the space, I guess. Yeah. And the basic idea behind it is programmable art, which means art that changes either over time or with audience interaction, right? So either you have certain data affecting the way the art looks or sounds like, or you have the owners of other NFTs interacting with it and changing the master, right? So it's about, we call it programmable art. You can call it dynamic art as well, or ever-changing art. But that's the idea, and that's what we specialize in.
Yeah, and I don't think. I mean, has this ever been done before? I mean, before NFTs, was this a thing before? I mean, I've never really thought about it. I've never seen anything like it until NFTs. So
Yeah, I mean, you have sort of like, I guess in the contemporary art world, for example, you have certain interactive pieces in galleries, right? That would be one of the things I would think. You have certain experiments done by musicians where there is audience interaction that affects the way something sounds. But I think what NFTs bring to the table that was impossible before is that these things have a sort of autonomy, right? It's not like no one's checking them or changing them manually, as in, we don't have to go as the async platform and affect something and make it different or whatever. It does it so by itself.
Yeah.
Right. So it's really autonomous art, I think, is the thing that I think has really been the major paradigm shift that has allowed us to do this with NFTs.
Yeah. So just to cover it, you've got two angles. You've got from the artist perspective, and then you've got the collector's perspective. So the artist will produce a piece of work which will give a collector exclusive rights. So would you want to change things within the piece of art? Well, that might be the background or the scale or rotation or different things like that.
Right.
And then so is that right? So and then that's done with layers. Is that right?
Yeah. So one of the things we work on, because there's also we work on dynamic art, which doesn't involve audience interaction, which we can talk about later. Yeah. But on that end, on the layered end, essentially as an artist, you can create an art piece with many different components, right? So it could be, if it's a portrait, it could be parts of the face, or if it's like a landscape, for example, just very simple examples, it could be like the trees or the background of the sky. And then from a predetermined set of states that the artist picks, like they say, okay, so you have, this nose, this nose, this nose, and this nose, then you offer a collector the ability to change and pick which one of these are live at any given moment, right? So that's the idea, is that the artist creates many different possibilities for an art piece, and then the collectors collectively choose what is currently live at any given moment and what the actual art piece looks like.
Yeah. So it's almost like live art as it lives on and it keeps changing all the time. So if you own the master and then let's say there's 20 layers that other individuals own, and they can change and put their contribution towards the art, the master changes whenever the other parts change. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So the master itself changes based on what the collectors of the layers do. So you could have, you could own a piece that, say, in 50 years, for example, someone could just change it suddenly because they own a layer, or maybe in every few minutes. It depends on what kind of the artwork is and what the back and the context is. It has that possibility of changing over time.
So what kind of person would buy this as a collector? I mean, are you meant to buy multiple layers? Are you meant to just buy one? Who's this attracting?
So I think it's attracting those who, really see the blockchain as a medium, right? That's the main thing I think about. So, if you're a collector, for example, and you're interested in not just owning passively a piece, but actively interacting with it in a way that goes above and beyond just, owning it or looking at it, then you might be interested in owning a layer, because that means that you can leave your imprint forever on a piece of art. For example, some of the ones that have been on our platform that are now historic, right? Like Xcopy has done 2 amazing pieces, for example, which are now sort of like, crypto art staples. If you own a layer of that, then, if this ever gets shown in a gallery, for example, right? Or in some big installation somewhere, and you have the layer, you can actively change the experience of all the audience that's in the gallery at any given point. So it gives that sort of like, real time ability to change the context around you, right? Which I think is kind of beautiful in a way, and very, very interesting. You can imagine being in a museum, for example, right? In 50 years, when some of these art pieces are now considered classics, you go there with your phone and you log on your MetaMask, you're like, look, and it just changes for everyone in the museum.
So what the burning question is, how does that work? I think it's like, okay, then so I own a layer. Do we have to do it? Have you got a platform that we change it on, or do I have to have a certain type of skill in order to change it, or of coding or whatnot? So
the front end is completely user friendly, right? So there's 2 aspects, right? So the one is the front end, which is on the Async gallery. So if you have a layer, you go to the platform, you go to Async.Art, you go to your wallet and you say, okay, make layer change, right? And then you pick which one of the layers that you own you want to change and which state you want to change it to. So it's a very, very user friendly. It requires no coding skill whatsoever. On the back end, of course, what's really going on is it's a transaction on the Ethereum blockchain that when it gets broadcasted, the layer token affects what asset the master token is pointing to.
Okay.
Right? And then the renderer in real time, when the block's confirmed, re-renders a new image based on the current instructions given to it by the master layer. And then so essentially you have a set of instructions on chain and a master token that is pointing to different decentrally hosted, decentralizedly, I don't know what the adjective is, files that then get rendered on a renderer. And then so that there you go, you have the new image, and that's the objective, truthful state of the master as instructed by the blockchain, essentially.
Okay. So all these images, are they like IPFS?
They're IPFS currently, yeah.
Okay, so they're there, and so each time you change something, like you said, it's a transaction. So that means I'm paying a gas fee each time I change.
Yeah, there's currently gas fees involved. Of course, I mean, as you know, they fluctuate, but currently I'd say it's about $10-15 for a layer change. Or so.
Okay, it's reasonable. So in order to make that change, you have to pay a fee, but that would be it, just normal, just a general gas fee.
Yeah, and of course we're looking to, as we scale, as NFT scale, we're looking to make that as cheap as possible because we don't want that to be a barrier to interactivity.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk a bit, a little bit technical as well, because what I want to know is, okay, so these are ERC 721s. Now, to my knowledge, correct me if I'm wrong, is that each one is unique in its own right. That's so correct. The layers, are they also ERC 721s?
Yeah.
So how does it interact then? Because I think once a token is unique, how can it be changed?
So essentially, you're not writing on top of the token on the blockchain, but you're instructing the renderer where the token is pointing to from a different set of states, right? So think about it as like maybe the master token is like the center, and then you have the various layers around it, and then the renderer is looking at this as a set of artwork. And if there's a change in the pointing, which is a transaction that's allowed, then the pointing is, then the renderer reads that, okay, there was a change here. So, we're trying to essentially, I mean, of course, this gets very technical, and there's, code that I'm not a coder either, right? So there's a sense in which I'm not entirely sure exactly how it works.
Yeah.
But the basis of it essentially is that with the layer and the master and the renderer as a trifecta, you have the ability to have immutability while also having the ability to change things around.
Okay, so it's almost like, to my understanding of what you just said, is on a very basic level, is okay, then the master has all these possibilities built within already, and these layers are almost like an instruction saying, now we want you to show this instead of showing that.
That's correct, yeah.
And that's how they speak to each other, and that's it. Correct. So okay, that makes sense. So that's the art aspect of it. Let's talk about it as an artist. What would give, as an artist, why would I want to create a piece like this? And once again, what do I need to know in order to create a piece like this? Do I need to have a certain skill, or is this something that the platform also offers?
So that's the other thing that we're trying to be essentially extremely artist friendly is the idea, right? We want people to be able to make these things without knowing anything about coding. So you don't need any skills to be able to do it. We have we call it the canvas tool, which is you just upload essentially the states of the different layers, is like, PNGs. And then, once you've arranged everything on Photoshop and you're like, okay, so this is the one, this is the other state, this is that state. If they layer correctly, you upload them and you're done. We do everything else on the back end.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, so who would be interested in this? What we're seeing now is all sorts of applications of this, right? So of course, the very obvious application is, art that's in some way subject to it being more interesting if it changes, right? So a few pieces we have, for example, our Genesis piece called The First Supper is a collaboration between many different artists. Xcopy, Cody, Josie Bellini, A Lot of Money, I think, is there. Trevor Jones. They all have like a character in a dining table, right? And also various backgrounds and like, chandeliers and floors. And so each of the artists has one character allotted to them, and they make different states. So there, if you're an artist, this is a way to collaborate, but also to collaborate in a way that, shows more than one angle to what you can do, for example. Another thing we've seen recently is essentially gamified experiences, right? So ways that collectors can interact with each other. There's a couple of pieces, for example, recently, one of them is a blank page, and there's different letters. And if you own one of these, then you can change what letter it shows there. And the page is like essentially 100 different people trying to write selling stuff, right? On the blockchain. So
Yeah.
as you can be a game designer to make these things as well, like a game designer of like, you know, visual games essentially. You know, all sorts of things like that. We have on the autonomous front, which I didn't talk about earlier, which is art that changes, you know, based on data feeds, for example. We have a few pieces that change based on the Bitcoin price, right? So we have a piece that shows volatility, volume, price as a visual exploration as an art piece in itself. So every time, you know, every day it updates based on the Bitcoin price in a decentralized manner. Same with, you know, a piece called ETH Boy, which is Vitalik, sort of like Picasso in a Picasso manner, and it changes based on the price of Ethereum, or a piece that changes every hour of the day, right? So I guess as an artist, you can be like, well, I want something that is like reflecting of the time outside, right? Maybe you're interested in having, you know, a character that grows over a day or over the span of a year. So it allows for you to, when you create an art piece, not to just create a static thing that stays there forever, but to think about the potentiality and the spectrum of all the possible different ways something could develop. I think that gives, for me as a musician, and for many of my friends who are artists, I think the idea that you can create something that, you know, moves, is alive in a way, really opens up a lot of creative doors.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on there, like I know your background's producing wise, and the music side of it, that's something I can really see working with, because I mean, from what there's in music, when you're building a track, there's lots of different parts to that track. So the production side of it, you can get real creative. So tell me a bit about that side, because I know obviously you do the music side too.
Yeah, so the music side is something we started off in March, and I think we launched in April, May. So it's very new. It's a few months old. Again, in crypto time, not that new. It's a few years old.
Few years old.
So it's exactly the same system as the visual arts, right? So you have layers that correspond to different instruments, perhaps, or different audio tracks, right? So you can say, you know, the drums, for example, and then the vocals, and then the electric guitar, and then the keyboard, right? So you have all these different layers, which we call stems, which is a music production term. And each of these stems has the possibility of having many different states, right? So, okay, let's take the drum stem, for example. You can have acoustic drums, or electronic drums, or a breakbeat, or, you know, maybe jazz drums, or no drums, right? It can be acoustic. That's the stem. And then you have, you know, as many as you'd like maybe say you have 4 of these. Same with the vocals, right? Different vocalists, different lyrics, for example, different pianos, and then maybe a, you know, a ukulele playing a piano line or whatever. And you stack all this together, and you end up with an async music piece, right? So different stems, but correspond to different instruments with different states for each instrument. So you can imagine, for example, you know, if the drum stem has 3 different possibilities, and the guitar has 3 different possibilities, and the vocals have 3 different possibilities, that's 3 times 3 times 3, you know, that's 20, 18 plus, 3 times 9, 18, 27 different possible songs, right?
Okay, yeah.
And they all work with each other, right? So maybe drums 1 with vocals 3 with guitar 2, they make a different song then, right? So it's like different permutations that are possible from this primitive stems that we put out there. And that's what async music is. At any given point, as we said earlier, only one of these songs is currently playing, and that is chosen by the individual stem collector. So if I have the drums, I choose acoustic drums, you choose male vocals, and like someone in, you know, Japan chooses like guitar 3, then that's the song that's currently live.
How do you hear it though? Because I mean, another thing, how do you hear it? Because if you only own a layer and somebody that owns the master part, how would you actually see or hear the changes that you've made? Can you get access to that? You can literally just track down who owns it in their wallet and look at it. Is that how it
works? So one of the ways to track the changes is, of course, we have an activity feed on the website, right? So you can see who made changes. It's also on chain. So if you go to, you know, if you're a bit more technical and you go to the token ID on Etherscan, you can see what changes have been made recently. And then, of course, on the website, and we're trying to make more off-ramps, right? More ways for people to be able to listen to these songs. If you go to the Async Music Gallery and you press on a song, you can see what its current state is, what its stem mix is, who owns each stem. And then if you check like tomorrow or in a week, maybe now it's different, and you can see what changes were made. Okay,
so another thing, I don't know if you guys already looked into it already. So let's say that, okay, I own the master, and somebody, obviously the combination's been changed, and I'm thought, I love this track, but this might change tomorrow. So is there a possibility for me to mint that track as it is, for it to stay as it is, for me to keep?
Great. So that's amazing question, because it leads me to the third part of music, which is limited. Did you know that we have this already, or did you think?
No, I didn't know. I literally just so I didn't know that. So that wasn't set up or nothing like that. I literally just wondered if you could do that.
That's cool. It means it makes sense. So we have this third NFT, right? So you have the master, the layers, and the limited editions. So the limited editions are, a limited number of records. We call them blank records. So we have 2,000 silver ones, usually 10 gold ones, and 3 platinum ones. The main difference is aesthetics and scarcity. Think of them as a vinyl printer, right? So if you want one of these things, you can go to the song and mint the current state of the song as an ERC721 that you keep forever in your wallet. It has like metadata on like who owns it, what the block height was minted at, who owns it, the current state, and then you have the MP3 there that you can download, for example, or show off in any way that you want on various different galleries. So that's the way to capture the currency of the song. If you really like it, for example, if it's a rare one, right? Maybe there was a change that wasn't made in a long time, and then it's going to change back again, for example. You can go quickly, record it. Now it's yours and you keep it. And we call it a snapshot in time, right? It's like taking a picture of the history of the song as it continues evolving. You're like, okay, I like this one, I grab it, and now it's mine.
Now, I love that, man, because the reason why I think that is so cool, because let's say that we stay on the music aspect, but it also works with the art. Let's say that you had potentially just had 3 famous producers that had bought these layers at that time that have just kind of contributed toward this track, and then they sell it on. But that moment will be worth a lot of money. You know what I mean? So and same for the artists. When it collaborate, if 4 artists collaborate at the same time and they've contributed towards it, and you can see it and you can prove it, like I just think that's going to be amazing.
That's right. So what we've seen recently, for example, is when the piece is minted before it goes on sale, obviously the owner of each of the layers and the master is the artist, right?
Yeah.
So we've seen a lot of people who mint these records right in the beginning of the auction before everything is sold. And these are kind of rare now because they have the artist's name as the owner of the layer, right? It's like the original state of the song.
Okay.
So we've seen that like maybe these go for more, or they're more like, they're like sentimentally are more valuable. So there's this like aspect of gamification and rarity there, right? Like all these different components that affect implicitly at least the rarity of a piece or the importance it could have, which is who owns it at any given point.
Okay.
So that's exactly what.
And I can see this working obviously for fashion, which is going to be like same thing applies as controlling what color the sleeves are, to the type of stitching, to the type of neck, to the type of material. Like, is this something you guys are looking into now, or something you're going to think about in the future?
It's something that we definitely have seen as a possibility. Of course, I mean, we have so many things in the works right now that it's not top priority. But I personally think that digital fashion and programmability go so well together, right? This digital fashion opens up all these different avenues that we have never been able to even consider in the past. And one of them, I think, is programmability, right? So you can think of like some sort of amazing or super, rare or well, tailored, so to speak, digital item that is collaborative or is able to be changed by the owners, right? Maybe different, fashion houses own the layer, for example, and they are able to contribute to this amazing suit or this amazing dress.
I think that's going to be amazing, man. I think that's another thing that leads me on to, it's got me thinking about, okay, then and you've probably been asked this question already, is okay, then based on like, for example, NFT, you've seen Loot, what Loot have done. So they've kind of worked everything backwards. Now, obviously you guys are working with, here's the options. This is what you can work with. You can change it, but can people buy a layer and then contribute what they want to contribute and add what they want to add with their own skills? And then it changes. I mean, I know it gets a bit technical, but I mean, is this going to be something that's going to be possible? Because I think that's
extremely exciting. It's something actually. I just had a meeting that we're kind of like talking about this with a musician. Of course, we don't have the ability technically to do this right now, right? Because of the way that things are hosted and the way things happen on chain. But if this happens eventually, I think this would be amazing, like a really real-time collaboration between different musicians, where you can add things. And like play around in that way, or it's individual arts. Again, this is not something we're currently in the works or in the pipeline, but in the longer term, if we're able to sort of like sort the technical issues around that will be, I think, mind blowing. And really, really cool. Yeah,
and it was solve a lot of problems, isn't it? I mean, you obviously you've got a background in music, so when people are making music together, and when it comes to like royalties and who owns what, like that just makes sense to me. Like if you make a beat, you haven't got to worry with you're gonna get your royalties when obviously the song's sold. So just adding your different attributes to the song, I think that's going to be the future, and that's why I think NFTs are really going to disrupt music.
For sure, transparent royalties and like transparent distribution of profits as well immediately after is
Yeah.
so cool. Like a couple of points on this. The first is we currently have a collaborator tool essentially where you can go and as like the creators, if you like 5 of you who collaborate on a music piece, you can each add the percentage of royalties or the percentage of like ownership of each layer, right? And then it automatically, as we know, smart contracts automatically distribute profits. And as a point, when I minted I started on Async as a musician on the Genesis wave, minting my first piece with my band then. And I remember, the moment that the first sale happened of a blank record, seeing my Ether balance update in real time was like,
crazy.
It's a year and a half or 2 years, 2 years for the royalties to be deposited in my bank account from the traditional publishing, recording labels, right? And this was happening in 30 seconds. I was like, well, this is, for me, it was like completely mind blowing, right?
Yeah.
But of course, it's like the standard, in the crypto world. So that was really cool. I think it's an extremely powerful tool for musicians.
And it's trust. You can see, because you can see everything that's going on. It's more transparent, as you were saying it. Like, whereas, like you said, if something takes 2 years, how do you know whether that's the right amount you're even being paid or so on? Really, how can you track it down? Really?
Yeah. There's so many cases of like friends of mine who have been essentially screwed over by the labels, where they were just 200,000 was just missing, and no one knows where it went.
Just
and it only happens if you do an audit. You bring like an auditor in and like a whole legal team, and they get tons of money as well. And that's the only way. Again, 2 years later, so it's all it's all a big mess in the traditional musical world. And this transparency of the blockchain solves so many issues, I think.
Okay, so you mentioned that obviously you built this on the Ethereum blockchain, yeah? Yeah. So what about interoperability in regards to the royalties? Because I know that's a problem too also. Okay, you guys have agreed to royalties, but if it gets sold, that means it only can be sold on the Ethereum blockchain. Can it be transferred or could it be sold in any other marketplace? Do you understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah. So in terms of, well, of course, the royalty contract, the way it works is secondary sales, the artist gets a percentage, and the platform gets a very, very small percentage as well, but the artist gets the majority of the percentage on secondary sales. So currently, when you sell on Async, the royalty is built in. Of course, with OpenSea, there's been some issues with us and other platforms I've seen where it's hard to, because we lack a royalty standard right now.
Yeah.
It's really hard to make sure that the OpenSea contract respects the royalty breakdown.
Yes.
But we're currently working on that, right? So there's, non-origin. We were there in the talk, we were talking about triple lock royalties and the new, I think ERC 2981. I don't remember the exact.
Yeah, I think James was talking about that, wasn't he?
Yeah. So this is something we're thinking about, like how do we solve the OpenSea problem or the other marketplace royalty respecting issue? But I really do think in the next few months, this will be ironed out because there's so much pressure on platforms, and by like we really want the artists to get the royalties on secondary markets. So I think that will be something that's going to be solved. In terms of other chains, right? I mean, of course, I think with Solana right now there is a bridge that allows
Wormhole. Wormhole bridge.
Yeah. So I haven't looked into how royalties work there. I would presume it would be hard to translate it for a different chain. But again, I think that even there, this is something that we'd definitely be looking into. And I think because of the ethos of the industry, of the community as well, it will be something that I'm sure will be taken care of, because I don't think that for me, I mean, I started doing this because I'm seeing how much better this is for artists. And one of these things is the idea of royalties being transparent and forever there. So, the on Ethereum royalties issue we're working on and solving. Cross chain, I don't know yet. We haven't had any NFTs, to my knowledge, go to a different chain. But once that starts happening more and more, we're definitely going to be looking into that as well.
Yeah, I think that's a thing. I mean, I asked the question, but I understand. Like we said, we're at the early stages. Things have to be addressed all in good time, and I think this is something that's going to have to be addressed, because NFTs, they attract a lot of creators based on the royalty aspect, but then we don't want it to be centralized and saying you only can use this on this platform and sell it on this platform in order to receive the royalties. Otherwise, that kind of defeats the object, doesn't it? So, like I said, I think obviously there's different things coming out, like obviously the Wormhole, and there's going to be other options. But I think it's something that is definitely needed, and I think it's going to it'll come very soon.
For sure.
All right, and so you guys, are you looking to put on it? I mean, how are you getting yourself? I mean, because I didn't really, this is one thing also, I speak to a lot of people in the US, and it's kind of hard to determine which companies are in The US, because you assume it was in the US, and what guys are out there in the UK, and like I said, when I went to the event in Manchester, No Origin event, I met so many great organizations, creatives, and they're all based in the UK. So, like, yeah, how are you guys getting yourself out there? Are you, because you're based in London, right? Yeah.
No, we're based in the US actually.
Are you based in the? Oh gosh.
Yeah, I'm not. I work from here, but
all right.
the company is San Francisco based. Yeah, so it's more about I'm here trying to get ourselves out here, right?
Okay. You're trying to get out here. Okay, so there you go. That's a perfect example. Yeah, a lot of companies are just based in the US, but there's not many in the UK. So it's good to see that even though you're based in the US, you're trying to get out here and build over here too also. So people get access to
because we all work remotely, right? So we have people all over the world. I mean, I split my time in London and Greece. We have people who live in, from Bosnia to Ghana, right? We have all sorts of different people living in all sorts of different countries, which is great, I think. It's a truly remote workplace and company, and it hasn't been in any way a barrier to us moving forward and helping to create a sort of like a really, really powerful platform. So that's cool.
Okay, so you guys plan to work with any big musicians in order to, like, obviously draw a lot of attention to the platform? And you got an interest there?
Yeah, I mean, that's, I can't reveal much, but that's in the pipeline. We already have had a few really amazing musicians on the platform. So on our Genesis piece, RAC did a piece that was really, really cool. Mike Shinoda did a piece recently as well with us. We've had Richie Houghton, who's a really great electronic musician. A few we just launched this week a piece with the Viennese Symphony Orchestra and other some of the best musicians, classical musicians in the world. We have a lot of interest right now, and again, it's in a very early stage of the platform, so it's currently invite only. Like, I'm trying to curate maybe a music launch every month or so, just to show everyone what the platform can do and where it can go and the diversity behind it. But of course, soon we want to scale up, and there's a lot of projects in the pipeline that are really, really exciting.
What's the response from these artists and so on? Because I think not everybody's going to have a crypto background and understand what the blockchain is and whatnot. So how do you explain it? Are they excited about what's going on?
So usually it depends. I mean, when I explain the work to musicians, I go about it in different ways based on their background, right? So for those who have no idea about crypto art or blockchain technology, the way I usually go about it is say, look, this is a song that can change over time, by interactivity, for example. And they're like, okay, that's cool. They understand that because they're musicians, right? We think in layers and stems anyway. So that's really cool. And then they're like, okay, but how is that different, say, from me doing it on my website, right? Where I can just put on my website a song and then you can go and click and change things. And I'm like, well, the difference is that these are autonomous musical artworks and objects, right? That no one's in control of them except for what the rules of the blockchain dictate that the controller is. So even if Async goes bust in 20 years, right, the renderer is going to be open source and these things are still going to be changing. Even if, in 100 years, if we're all dead and the musicians dead as well, this thing is still going to be alive and changing. Like, you cannot guarantee this in Web 2, right? It's impossible to do that. And also you can guarantee ownership of digital assets in Web 2 as well. So I guess I introduce the crypto stuff more as a answer to the question of, like, why is this interesting and why can I not do this outside of crypto? And I think you cannot do this outside of crypto properly in the way that really makes this a meaningful, makes the sort of like aliveness of the piece meaningful and not just a gimmick, right? That's the big thing for me, is that this thing's being ever evolving and alive in a decentralized system is a very real and meaningful attribute to the art that goes above and beyond just like interactivity in a Web 2 setting, if that makes sense. Really, really autonomous and independent objects, artistic objects, but just happen to be digital.
Okay, so how far do you think this can go then, Achilleas, man? Like, if you just think about like the next 10 years, obviously technology is going to get better as it does. Where can you see this? What kind of dynamic NFTs industries can it go into? I mean, art is obviously and music an easy introduction, but what do you think can be disrupted completely?
That's a great question. I mean, so I guess I can answer it in a few different ways. So firstly, I think 90% of the music industry, I've said this a few times, 90% of the music industry is going to be on chain in the next 5 to 10 years because it just makes sense, right? we already see it hasn't happened yet, right? The music industry is very nascent in terms of its relation to blockchain, but it's so powerful. But I think there's no way that it's not going to completely take over. So that's my music industry thesis. In terms of more generally, the idea of programmable and dynamic NFTs, I think we're at the phase now where we're just sort of like completing the first phase, or the V 0.0, 0.1 of what NFTs are, right? Which is a very simple idea of like, okay, there is a way to link a ERC-721 token to a digital file. That's the thing we're just now finished wrapping our heads around, right? And we're slowly seeing how that can evolve into something more. So if you remember, for example, we went from Bitcoin to Ethereum, or from Ethereum to DeFi, right? There were like conceptual leaps in terms of how we think about this thing. So the first was like, okay, you can have money that's digital and it's online. And then you have a whole computer that's running in this way. And then you can have applications that are built on top of it. And, so all this, so I think we're currently from the first one to the second one, which is what more can these things do than just be ownership representations, right? So for example, we see games are starting to launch, right? Or gamified experience, like Pack's recent, project, the Lost Poets one, which is essentially says, well, it's not just a JPEG, it's also about what the token can do and how it interacts with other tokens and with, and the same, I think, with async, right? Async, I think, represents the idea that the paradigm for NFTs is not just that of a ownership receipt, or, or just the relation between you and a JPEG, but the relation between you, a token, different possibilities can have, how it can evolve. So I think, for dynamic NFTs, it can be anything that can be from music industry, visual arts, games, right? Gamified experiences. Text is something I'm really interested in. So, books or collaborative papers, right?
Okay. Yeah. True. That's the thing. I was thinking more along the lines of health sector. So like, or like even your passport, because I think if you got a master's and you've got layers that change certain things like your date of birth and so on, then by all means you can just have a master NFT that you own, and then obviously the layers can be changed. I'm not sure how it would work, who owns the layers, but I mean, I guess, but maybe you own the layers, but you have to get authorized by certain authorities to be able to change that. But then,
for sure,
do you get what I mean? So that I think that definitely work.
Yeah, and I think in terms of like just NFTs above and beyond the arts, right? Like with now that we're slowly seeing the advent of like zero knowledge, computation and proofs and snarks, and the way that you can prove to other people certain things about yourself without revealing them anything else about yourself, right? We're gonna see this is gonna be so amazing for like relationship with authorities without you having to reveal more things that they need to know, right? Like audits will just be, you give them your like proof and they see it and they're like, okay, you're telling us the truth, but we don't need to know, like, for example, things that we wouldn't have to know otherwise. And this can be captured by NFTs. So this is very like, zero knowledge NFTs are not here yet, and they're still quite far away. But once this part takes off, which is, really highly advanced cryptographic proofs with unique tokens, non-fungible tokens, we're talking about a whole new paradigm about relating with the world and with anyone else, right? On any sort of level, from bureaucratic to artistic to cultural, to financial, to the trading. It's this. I can't even imagine. I don't know, right? It's so mind-blowing to me, which is why I'm focusing on the music, because my brain can just about handle the possibilities there.
And there's so much can happen, man. Like one thing, I remember when I first heard about dynamic NFTs, and the thing that come to my mind for some, I just related it to how would this work in sports. Now, obviously, I just go to football because that's the go-to thing in soccer, as you would say in the US. They say that obviously England, the football team, you could buy a picture and it would be, I don't know, from some players on there, and the picture could change as the players change. Or another thing is that if the England win the World Cup, then it opens up another utility to that NFT. Like that's the kind of things that really excite me, and seeing things that it's almost like instead of putting a bet on, you're actually invested into something happening, and you've got something there that will give you the access if it does actually happen. Did you get what I mean?
Yeah, that's something that we've thought about as well. Like with the autonomous ones, where all data can work. You can have a picture in your wall, right, in a mural, for example, which gets the information from the chain and renders it. And yeah, as you said, like if England won, the World Cup, then you can suddenly have, or the Euro,
Yeah, the Euros, yeah.
we didn't. But if that happened, you could have like suddenly a trophy appears, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
You're watching the TV, the penalty goes in, and instead of losing, England wins, and suddenly you look to your left and you see a trophy there, and it's like, how, and it's not that it's not like that someone went and pressed the button. It's that like maybe a chain oracle said England won the World Cup, and automatically, right, the picture changes, which is, I think, so cool. It's like almost like magic, right?
Yeah.
That's what we, like 10 years ago, this would have been magic, like this thing changing based on what happened in the world. But now we've built this, back in there where the more data feeds that get pulled on chain, and the more abilities we have to create, off ramps to like ways of displaying these things, then it looks like magic. That's the world, and then your art changes.
Do you think you can work with? This me just going far, mind wandering, but I'll ask. You think you work with portraits? So I mean, I'm not sure how it would keep track of if you have a baby picture. I'm not sure how it would keep track of whether you take pictures every week, or I don't know whether I don't know. Maybe I'm not sure where it would get the image from, but do you think that could happen? Like a portrait could change over time of a child, or even if if they're 10 years old and you started the baby picture from then, and you put all these pictures in.
Yeah. You could have that, right? You could have maybe going backwards. I don't know.
Yeah. Going backwards. Yeah, Benjamin Button.
Yeah. Or you can have like maybe you have a neural network or an AI sort of like projecting what you would look like.
Yeah.
And then that's on your wall, and then you as you grow, you're like, do I look different on this? And you could see like the different possibilities. That could be really cool, right?
Yeah, that'd be dope. I like that, man. I like that concept. That's something they're the kind of things that excite me. Like just something that, I've never seen before. I want to see things that I haven't seen before, and things that relate to real. I mean, I like the fact of like things that can relate to real life things and real life events. So I know we just use football as a basic thing, but I mean, there's so many things that are happening that people, whether it's something to do with the government and the parliament or anything, like you can buy pictures and things change over time. Even like the Queen, like people are into the royal family and the Queen get married and things over time that changes. Like or investing into like just going to the whole social token side of it, like investing into somebody from a young age, whether that is sports or singer, and then as they get their achievements as they get older, things change. On the picture.
And maybe the earlier you invested, the more things would be in the picture, right?
Like
these early achievements wouldn't be in the things that were bought by people later, for example.
Yeah.
There's so many. I mean, again, like we're both sort of like riffing off this, and we're both coming up with ideas, and that's the beauty of programmability. Of course, we're still really, really early.
Yes,
We have on the autonomous side, we have time right now. We have ETH balances, we have Bitcoin balances, the prices rather. We're trying to add more data feeds and seeing like what oracles we can plug in. But it's happening so fast, and I think sooner rather than later we'll have more and more data feeds that we can exploit to be able to really trustlessly update art and music based on things that you would normally be able to use as artistic mediums. It's a new medium. It's not just think about the ways that artists could create things if they knew that the things they create could be affected by all sorts of other things. That changes the way that you think about making your art, not just what the art looks like, right? So we talk about portraits now, but maybe like a great conceptual artist could think about utilizing time as a medium, or the stock price or the weather as a medium that could be artistically extremely interesting, right? Maybe it feeds into the concept in some way that we haven't thought about yet.
Like it's a simple example of that is like your mood. I mean, we already got it, like the mood of lights and when you enter the room and so on. So if it is like snowing outside, then it reflects that on the image. And so on. So maybe you got a picture of yourself, and if it's snowing outside, then you got a scarf on. Yes. And then and so on. If it's hot outside, you got your beach shorts on. So that I think that would be cool, man.
Yeah, there's so many different, and again for music as well, right? Where it's not just so obvious, but still you could have, if it's raining, maybe it's not raining in the song, but maybe like it changes the drums slightly, or if an event happens, or whatever it could be. There's you can think about anything, and it could really, artists can now use this, and musicians can now use this as a means to create completely new kinds of art. That's what excites me about this space so much.
Okay, so I remember you touched on the murals, the image, the photo frames. that you guys offer? Like, just tell me a bit about that.
So yeah, Mural is a company that makes this amazing, really like real looking canvases that are of course screens, but they look like real canvas, look like paper, and they're like extremely high definition. So we have a partnership with them where they take data from blockchain and the renderer and update these paintings in real time. So you have and into from our Async gallery. So you have like you can display on it like a piece that's autonomous or a piece that's layered change, and then when there's a layer change or autonomous change, or when the hours change, it changes on your wall as well, right? And it's like a very early iteration of what we see programmable NFTs being like, which is more off-ramps, right? The more ways to explore them, experience them, and showcase them, then the better they are, right? And you don't have to own the NFT currently to be able to display it. You can display any NFT from the gallery, which is I think quite cool. And of course, we're thinking about the balance there. But that's one of our partnerships that we're really happy about, and these things look really cool, and just again, seeing things change in real time on your wall is from the blockchain is kind of a really cool thing.
With the guys that own the layers, with the guys that own the layers, do they put the work up on the wall? So if you just own the background, it's a yellow background, and you can change that. Do they put it up on the wall, or they just own the layers for the simple fact they can change it?
I think that I know that there are some. I know there are some collectors who own layers, who also own murals, who also display the work on the murals and then change them.
Themselves. Well. Okay, all right.
There's a couple like Twitter people that I've seen be like, "Oh, look, I just changed the layer and changed it on my wall. It's really cool." But others just own the layers and change them, and they just watch them on the screen and stuff. But I guess you could display the layer, just the background by itself. You could see that some of the layers are art pieces by themselves. So, for example, in the Rubble connection, there's a piece called Rubble by Xcopy on our platform, where it's 36 different faces on a big screen, right? And they change, or you can remove them if you want the layer, etc. And well, a couple of them are gonna be in a Sotheby's auction soon. And also, what's really cool is that people are using them as profile pictures in themselves, just the layers, because they have the small heads and they look like people. So you can see like a few people on Twitter, for example, who use these layers as PFPs, and also they can use them to change other things. So that's again the evolution, right? Like the PFP craze we've seen now. How about if you have that, but you can also use it to do things with it, right? Like change something else, for example. So that's what we're thinking about as well.
Okay, so just to kind of round it off, I always like to hear you working obviously the music side of things, but overall with NFT technology happening and all these is disrupting all these industries, where do you see things in, say, the next 10 years? I want you to talk me through a day of how that looks to you. So you wake up in the morning to what's happening, from whether it's music to or you're going to the metaverse or so on. Like, where do you see just a short overview?
Okay. Let's try this. Okay, so you wake up in the morning. Maybe let's make it a bit extreme, right?
Yeah, go extreme as possible. I've had all sorts, man.
Okay, maybe the alarm clock that wakes you up is a one-of-one song by your favorite artist that you own, that you minted, right, at some point in programmable fashion, right? So that was wakes you up, almost a personalized, unique song that also entitles you to royalty streams from the artist catalog, because you invest early on. Instead of the artist selling the record, the rights to a label for a tiny amount and giving away all their IP forever, maybe they kept 50% and gave their early funds 20% at a fair auction as a seed round, essentially. So you were early there. This art is now massive, right? So you're entitled to some share of the revenue with them while they maintain the majority. So that's what happens when you wake up. You wake up and you see that as an early investor in this musician, you have this beautiful relationship, and you got an underlying claim to some royalties from them, from a song being streamed in a centralized manner, a programmable song being changed and streamed in a centralized manner. And that's just 10 a.m., right?
Yeah.
And I don't know what happens afterwards, but that's the part that I'm working on, helping bring to reality, I guess. It's like, for me, it's really is about the relationship of the artist to their audience, and the relationship of the musician to their fans, which has been disrupted, I think, and arbitrarily siloed off by music labels, which really have exploited both the musicians and the fans, if you think about it, right? Which I don't think is great. And if you break that down, your love for more free-flowing interaction, financial and otherwise, between a fan and their favorite artist, and the other way around, you really are opening up the door to so many different both products and artistic experiences, and also just like I think less money going to the middleman, right? I mean, of course, that's always the promise of crypto, but in this case, I think we might be able to achieve it if we really think about it and really carefully think about the ethos behind these things as well, right? Not fall into easy traps.
Yeah. Well, for the record, what you just said, I know companies, and the only reason why you said it because you know companies are already doing it. But I know that, for example, the royalty side of it, of owning the catalog, and royalty do that already. So they give you access. You can buy into a catalog and receive royalties through streams and whatnot. And then for the investing in the artists at the early stage on a DeFi side of it, I think they're called Achilleas. They told it. Yeah, they're already doing that, aren't they? To a certain
and Royal as well, which hasn't launched yet. The Blau / Paradigm.
Yeah.
They're doing that as well. There's a lot of and eventually I see that side coming together with the NFT side, right? And
yes,
like there being maybe one asset or combination, or it would be more than just everything would be like melding together in a way. And you wouldn't even know maybe that there's a blockchain behind all of it, right? You don't necessarily have to interact with it. It's just as long as it's there and it's really really strong and stable, right? Like it's not sort of like some chain that doesn't work very well. Then you don't have to know it's a chain. Like we are early, so we kind of like really understand the technicalities behind it. But eventually, these things are just going to be the way the world is, right?
Okay. One more question, just to squeeze a little bit more out of you, is so what's your thoughts on DAOs?
DAOs, I think, are they're the next step, right? In the evolution of this space. Again, it's like I think DAOs are now where NFTs were in like February, March 2020, right? I think we're in that where like people are like, wow, this is really cool and you can do some things with it, but we haven't seen exactly what their power is and how the mainstream wouldn't be interacting with them, right?
Yeah.
I have some really optimistic views on DAOs and some slightly pessimistic views as well on DAOs that I think are interesting. So the optimistic view obviously is that you have a non-hierarchical way of coordination, right? Maybe it's cultural coordination, maybe it's financial coordination. On the cultural side, again, you could have fans who maybe don't have, thousands of pounds to spend on music NFTs or music royalty NFTs. You can just like pitch in with a little bit and really participate democratically, especially if there's quadratic voting involved and it's not just like a whale can just steer the whole thing. If it's really properly done, they can really participate in a relationship with a musician where they're actively helping and guiding other members into like a really beautiful future. I think that's way better than a record label, which again is hierarchical, top down. So that's the optimistic view. Now the pessimistic view that I have is, once you create an organization that's so, especially at scale, if it's really large, that's so remote from each other and the products that they have, you could really imagine some DAOs maybe pumping and dumping artists, right? Like they could, like, if they're really big, they could like buy the token, for example, and then just do the usual pump and dump things where they just like they pump it all up and then they just dump it and it goes to zero. Maybe like emerging artists, they can create that organic hype and then like sell off at the top and then run with the money. But in this case, it's not a token that you dump to zero. It's like a real person, right, with a career behind them who's trying to make something work, and they maybe have beautiful music coming out, but because they were in some way rather profitable in that sense, you could see the same thing happening now that we see with market manipulation, but with people and creativity. And I think that's something that we need to worry about now, not wait until it happens.
Valid point. That's a valid point. Yeah, I didn't really even consider that, but when we have too much control, when people have too much control, it gives people an option to do. It depends on their intentions, doesn't it? Yeah, and we hope that people have good intentions, but we know that's not always the case.
Yeah. And if it's like maybe it's not even people running it, maybe it's like bots running it down, right? Maybe it's like our bots. Like currently, you see on Uniswap, you have all these bots doing like MEV and like they're arbing, asset to asset to make sure that the price stays properly, and then they do like all sorts of things, not automatically. No one like is tracking them. It's not me there who's dumping on people. If the whole DAO is in itself sort of like automated in some way and it's running on algorithms, then it could just be dumping and pumping people in a real way that affects their livelihoods and their creativity in a way that I think would be really destructive actually to them. So I think that's something we need to think about. Is like, of course, the middleman is bad, and I'm so happy about this technology. But if it goes too far and we don't think about the implications it could have once scaled, and once financialization is like everywhere, then we could end up in a world where, where that freedom turns into oppression, or sort of like the destruction of possibilities.
Yeah.
That's my
Okay. Well, this is the reason why we have these conversations, because it's not all blue skies and positivity. We're not trying to be negative, but it's also, you need to, if we want to build this, we want it to be what it can be. We have to have these conversations and talk about what can go wrong, so we can kind of prevent that before it goes wrong.
Because we believe in this system. That is why we have, like, I work full time in the spaces. I'm not like, I don't dislike it. It's just we have to be mindful of where it could go wrong to be able to get it right, and I think that's extremely important, especially on these things that we haven't yet happened, like cultural and musical questions around DAOs, for example. This is not something that's it's now just starting to take off, and we need to think very seriously about the implications of it.
All right, well, that's a nice way to end it on that note, just giving you your insights on the positive and the negative sides of DAOs. But I mean, I've enjoyed speaking to you about everything in regards to dynamic NFTs and what you guys are doing. I think it's been a real interesting conversation. I hope you've enjoyed it too.
Thank you so much. It was great. Really, really fun. Yeah.
Where can people find yourself, or obviously find links to Async.Art?
So Async is on Async.Art, and the Async.Music is Async.Art/music. You can see the gallery there. You can bid on pieces. You can like have a listen to. Of course, all the music is like freely available to listen by anyone, so you don't have to own anything to listen to it. Or you can then purchase limited editions or bid on the music and the art pieces. And I just started my Twitter. It's not very, I'm not posting a lot yet, but it's Achilleas 40. So ACHILLEAS 40.
Okay, well, I'm going to give you a follow, definitely. We can keep connected. But yeah, thanks for coming on and sharing the gems, and hopefully we can get you guys at a later stage. I always like to catch up on what you guys are doing and just seeing what you've took to the next level, because I'm sure in the next month or towards next year, you're going to be doing a lot of things as you are growing rapidly. So
I really hope so.
Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks everyone for watching. Everyone stay listening. Take care.